Welcome.
Hi.
It's another good day on the We Are For Good podcast.
We've got such a fun story.
You know, my favorite days on the podcast are when we highlight extraordinary people doing extraordinary things in the world, and they see a need and they rise up and they become the change that they want to see. And that's why I'm excited to welcome Southern Smoke to the podcast
good folks in the
today.
house.
We are so excited to tell this story today. We've got Catherine Lott and Lindsay Brown on the podcast today, coming in from Texas. Hi, ladies.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
So glad you're here. I want to give just a 10,000-foot overview about Southern Smoke because we have a mutual friend who sent us this little nonprofit story, and I just fell in love with it because it was launched by a chef who was trying to. He saw a friend suffering from MS, and he didn't just sit there and say, "I don't know what to do to support you." He completely rose up, created a massive movement, and fundraised for it. It was his friend who was a sommelier, right?
Yes.
And I'll let you share that story. I won't go in and botch all the details. And they end up raising, over time, over $700,000 for the MS Society. And they end up becoming this the largest third-party fundraiser in a 5-state area. And spoiler, these are chefs. These are people that work in the restaurant industry. These are like our warriors on the front lines of feeding us. And it just goes to show anybody can be a fundraiser because all you really need to do is have the passion and the wherewithal and the hustle. And I'm just so excited to talk to Southern Smoke today. I want to give them just one more quick little highlight of something that we've done. If you don't think that they're a legit nonprofit, they have given away and distributed almost $3.5 million in COVID relief alone this year. So we are so fascinated to talk about how this nonprofit came to be and what you guys are doing in this space, because I think we're all at home right now ordering our takeout and running to the restaurant, and we want to know how we can support this industry, support these individuals that are in this industry, and really figure out how can we step into the gaps of what this pandemic has created. So I'll stop, and I want to let's kick it to Catherine first and give us a little bit of your background and how you came to be connected with Southern Smoke.
Oh, wow. That's a big question.
You only have 12 seconds. No. I'm kidding.
Start the clock.
So Lindsay and the chef that you're referring to is Chef Chris Shepard. And I have been friends for a really long time. And I've worked in nonprofit originally from the performing arts sector for over 20 years. And then I went out on my own to create a special projects organization specifically to help support nonprofits in those special projects they may not want to hire a full-time staff member for. And so Lindsay has been incredibly gracious and generous and sat on boards of mine and been just a super big champion. And so when they started Southern Smoke, eventually it became a 501c3. And she asked me just to step in and oversee in a very part-time basis the general governance, the general budget, the general stuff to make sure that they were compliant, and to also help out with their big fundraising festival that you referred to earlier. And then I'll stop here, but then Hurricane Harvey hit, and that's really where the story takes off for me.
Oh, I can't wait for that. Okay, we'll back it up and kick it over to Lindsay. Yeah, kind of fill in the dots and tell us how you got connected.
Sure, absolutely. So Chris Shepard we co-founded Southern Smoke together. He's also my fiance. So we've been working together and been together for many years. And so when Antonio Gianola, who is our friend and Chris's former sommelier, came to him and said, I've been diagnosed with MS. I want to be the face of this disease. We had, just in Houston, had another chef, a very young, promising chef, who had committed suicide after he was diagnosed with MS. He could no longer hold a knife. It was a huge loss. And Antonio came to us, he's like, I don't want to be this unknown. I want everyone to know what I'm going through. I want to be the face of this. So could we do an event to raise awareness about MS? And, Chris and I immediately said yes. And we were thinking, it'd be a 200-person dinner. We called some of our friends, Aaron Franklin, Rodney Scott, Sean Brock. We're like, why don't you guys come to Houston? We can do like a South Carolina, Texas barbecue situation outside. And when we went to the mayor's office of special events to ask for her advice on closing some sidewalks, she changed everything. And she said, no, we're going to shut down all the streets around you. We're going to give you a free stage. We're going to give you all the vendors and make them give you great discounts. And we walked out of her office and we said, I guess we are throwing a festival. And so that year we thought it was going to be 200 people. And we ended up throwing a party for 800 people. And about a month before the festival, we realized that maybe we should tell the MS Society. And I didn't know how to reach them. So I literally filled out the info form on their website and said, we're going to host this festival and we're going to raise $100,000. And they called us and basically thought we were crazy.
In 3.6 seconds, they called you.
Right. I think they get emails like that all the time. And then people are like, here's $100. And so when they came to the festival and we gave them a check for $180,000 that year, they were in tears. And the same thing, we got slightly bigger year 2 and brought in more chefs from around the country. And this became both a fundraiser, but also a way for Houstonians to get to know different people and different chefs and food scenes from other cities around the country. So and also for us to show Houston to our friends from around the country. So it hit a lot of different points of interest for us. And so then, of course, we actually had all the chefs planned for year 3. We were a month out when Hurricane Harvey hit. And we realized very quickly that we could not give money to the MS Society that year. We knew that our industry was desperate. And it's so interesting to me looking back from through a COVID lens, what Hurricane Harvey did to our industry. So, restaurants were closed for 1 week or 2 weeks and people were desperate for money and we didn't know how to get it to them. The Mayor's Fund, JJ Watt's Fund, they were all great things in raising millions and millions of dollars, but we knew that they would not get directly into the hands of the people in the industry. So we figured out a way through a detailed application process and through help with another nonprofit, Legacy Community Health, which was our neighbor. Their hospital was right behind the restaurant. And we came up with this process where we translated the application into English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We literally put up flyers all over the city. And it was hard at the time to get people to apply because the restaurant industry is so proud. Very few people will admit that they need help. And we ended up with about 200 applications. Our restaurant friends from around the country were raising money for us, and we would get checks for like $16,000, $20,000 for fundraisers we didn't even know that were happening. And so we were able to grant $501,000 to 139 families during Hurricane Harvey. And that's when we realized our industry does not have a safety net, and this is necessary year round. And so we continue to support the MS Society in any way that we can, but our major focus now is emergency relief for the restaurant industry.
I want to jump in here real quick because I want you to create a picture for our community of who are these restaurant workers. I mean, intrinsically we could figure it out, but what are they facing? And you're talking about 1 to 2 weeks in Harvey, and that is entirely crippling to an individual or to a family. I mean, to put that on the scale of a pandemic seems like it's almost too large to even comprehend. So can you define kind of who this is and what they're working through?
I'll take that just from the applications come across my desk every day. And we have an anonymous process in order to, like Lindsay said, curtail any sort of apprehension about applying in case people do want to protect their identity. So that said, what we see primarily are multi-family homes with many generations within the home. We see a lot of single parents because this industry does make it so it makes schedules capable of juggling just about anything. And we know that the people that are part of this industry, they're hustlers. They're going to work as hard and as fast as they can. And we also see a lot of students, graduate students, et cetera. And then, of course, we see a lot of people who are in the immigration system, whether their statuses are pending, or whether or not they're dreamers, or whatever the case may be. But you're seeing a lot of the more vulnerable populations represented in this industry. And we're also, for instance, the #1 employer of vets that come back from war. This industry is a catch-all. As he's already beautifully said, we were already perfectly poised to respond to COVID. Not that anyone wants a pandemic to be part of their business strategy.
Truth.
But the other part of this is that all of our value system is completely influenced by our co-founder, Chef Chris Shepard, and by the culinary world. And back during Hurricane Harvey, he was literally walking to the restaurants in the flood on foot to open his kitchen to check on his restaurants. And as soon as he checked on his restaurants, then he jumped behind in the kitchen and started cooking for first responders and making sure that they were okay and making sure that our city was okay and doing everything that he could. So it wasn't a matter of whether or not we were going to respond to COVID in a significant, avid way. It was how we were going to get it done and just going from there because of what the culinary world does in times of crisis, and how we are directly influenced by that.
I just think it's so great that we are highlighting this area at this moment in time, because I just think of the Restaurant Association as people who roll their sleeves up. They have such grit. They get in there. They make things happen. They make it work in whatever way that it is. And we just hear so much in the last couple months about this expression we never really thought about, which is essential workers. And I think people just immediately go to frontline caregivers and to, people in the grocery stores. And it's like, there is a huge population of people who are really trying to deliver on the front lines. And it's just fantastic that you have wrapped a mission around supporting them and creating that safety net. And if I am a person listening to this podcast right now and I'm a fundraiser, I want to know your third party fundraising strategy, because many people that are listening right now are going to say, how did you get your message out? How did you tell this story of what you wanted to do? And how did you do it quickly and simply to really equip these individuals to mobilize as an army across the country? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that the message started through relationships. So because of the festival, we already had contacts and other chefs and pitmasters around the country who were invested in our organization. So when it came time, when Hurricane Harvey happened, most people around the country in the chef community knew to call Chris and said, what do we do? How can we help? Because they knew he was ingrained not only in the community, but also in philanthropy. And that continued to grow once we launched the National Emergency Relief Fund, which was prior to COVID, because we had worked with these partnerships, these friends around the country, whether it was to donate money to the fires in Napa Valley, or we worked with Sam Jones and Vivian Howard in North Carolina to donate money to specific communities after Hurricane Florence. So they knew that we put our money where our mouth was, and they knew that we delivered. And so the same goes with getting the word out that, Chris has had great relationships with media, both locally and nationally, for a long time. And so when we first launched Southern Smoke, those were the first people we reached out to. The fact that our little 800-person festival got national press year one was pretty great, and it just continued to grow. And so when people were doing stories about Hurricane Harvey, when people were doing stories about emergency relief for the industry, they knew exactly where to go. So when COVID happened, I mean, he talked to everybody. He talked to the New York Times. He talked to Rolling Stone. He talked to Food and Wine. Food and Wine came on board as our media partner for the same reason, because they knew that we had the process in place. They knew that we did what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, and just like
is integrity.
Yeah, and like Lindsay mentioned before, the other part of this is creating those really precious third-party fundraisers with strategic partners. And yes, integrity speaks to all of that as to how we solidify them. But the other part of that is, just as Lindsay was saying earlier, when we're talking to Restaurant Workers Community Foundation, and when we're talking to Emeril Lagasse's foundation, et cetera, those folks, they know how to make money. They know how to raise money in their way. And then, you know, the other part of that is that we have people that know how to produce races or marathons or whatever that case may be, or throw virtual Halloween parties, or make beer, or sell vodka, or whatever it is. And the ultimate message to me as a fundraiser is, you do what you do, and you trust us to do what we do, and keep the integrity of both of those positions and come together in a way that makes sense. And what I see so often, and I've been guilty of it in my early years, is we don't get into putting square pegs into round holes. You know, we are not going to try to be a marketing engine for someone that makes music, for instance, right? I mean, it really has to go back to mission-based partnering, making sure that those partners that you have are genuine and invested, and that they're there for the right reasons, and that, as Lindsay again said, you know, that we can do right by them. If it doesn't make sense, we had somebody yesterday, for instance, that wanted to give us a bunch of burger cards for us to hand out, which is really nice, but it doesn't make sense for us, right? And so we're going to work with that partner to create some other sort of opportunity when that does make sense, whether it's events or whatever. But I think that it's just as okay to say, this doesn't make sense right now, and be transparent with those third party folks, so that they do come back and they do trust you later on down the road, rather than trying to make every single thing stick and work.
You guys are such our people.
They are our people. And I love that it's all rooted in total integrity. And from that comes, you know, transparency. I love this concept of you all meeting in the middle. I think the Emeril Lagasse example is great about saying, yeah, we would love to take your gift, and we're going to earmark part of it for, you know, the Gulf states, which is so smart to me. That's allowing them to impact their community. But we also want you to buy into the fact that this is a national problem that we want to address in all communities. And I think that if you're really subscribing to what we talk about here as an abundance lifestyle, that we want to make sure that everybody has enough wherever they are. I just think that's a really, really smart method. So excellent job, and way to steward the gift. I'm sure they keep coming back because it is so trustworthy, and because they feel good about where it's going, and they know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
So I wonder if y'all could talk specifically about the COVID relief efforts, and if there's a story that sticks out to you, maybe of the impact that you got to see of your work on the receiving side.
Lindsay, you want me to take, or you want to take this one?
Yeah, you can take that one.
I'd actually like to back up a little bit outside of just COVID, because I think that the most impactful story, and the one that has influenced, and dare I say, Lindsay, I think that this is the one that's influenced us both the most.
Probably.
And certainly Chris as well. And really sort of our benchmark for how we want this organization to function, and the meaningfulness behind it in the culinary community, which is again and why people call Chris the moment that things do happen. We had a call from someone who had seen our press in the Houston Chronicle, and her son was in a state-run hospital, and he was on his 5th brain surgery. He had had a horrible motorcycle accident, and he was 24 years old, and he ran a pizza and chicken wing joint here in Richmond, Texas. He has given us permission to use his identity. So his name is Danny, and Danny's mom called and said, I don't know what to do. He's run out of insurance. He had some funky insurance, like many people that are underinsured or sub-insured do. His insurance had run out, and they were telling him that he needed to essentially go to a facility that was going to be a hospice for him. And the president of that organization went and met with Danny's mother and said, we don't have the capabilities of saving your son. We don't have the capabilities of getting him the help that he needs. And yet there is an organization out there called TIRR, T-I-R-R, here in Houston, Texas, that is world-class, and they do have what it takes to save him. And unfortunately, when she contacted TIRR, they said, yes, we can most likely save your son. However, we need $100,000 up front. And they were asking them to leave the hospital that day. He's still on feeding tubes at this time. He's still got fluid in his brain and attached to tons of machines and is not cognitively aware at all of what's going on at this point. And they're shooing him out. And she called and said, I would sell my homes and I would sell my cars, and my entire family would fundraise, and we would do whatever it took to get this $100,000 to save Danny's life. But we can't get it today. And can you help us? And I called Chris and Lindsay immediately. And the answer was a resounding yes across the board, that this is what we're really here for. At the end of the day, there is no other organization that can save this man's life. And we wired over $100,000 that day and got Danny the help that he needed. And the greatest part of that, was that a number of years, 2 years later, right, Lindsay? Yeah. Danny was at our festival, and he was able to meet some of the chefs that had contributed.
He was still in a wheelchair. 100% yet, but one of the things that we keep saying is that we can't wait for the day when Danny can be slinging pizzas with Chris Bianco at our festival.
Oh my gosh.
Completely back and running the world.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to adjust my brain because we're all like wiping tears away from our eyes right now. If you're at home right now, doing whatever you're doing grocery shopping, at work, driving in your car, let this be an example that average people can do extraordinary things. For one man to step up and say, I want to be the face of MS Society, and to start a movement that leads to saving a Danny. This is within everyone's reach. I mean, we talk about this so much. If you are a believer and wanting to be the difference that you want to see in the world, take your empathy and take a first step, because to me, this is the end game of what can happen when you do that. And I would even be so bold as to probably guess that you would say it is entirely worth it if Danny was the only one that you got to save. All of this work, these missions are so important, and to be able to say yes. Tell me how that felt when you called her back and said, yes, we're going to be able to do this and we're going to wire that. Tell me about that moment.
I mean, there is very much the obvious of just it felt as if there were a bazillion pounds on her shoulders that literally just rolled off all in 1 second. And she truly thought that, we were going to connect her to this person and do this and, maybe help her in some way. But she never thought that a phone call would come and say, we've got you, just take care of Danny. And that was probably the coolest part. And then all of a sudden you start hearing the nurses on the floor she said that they're all holding each other. They're jumping up and down, the phone's falling on the floor, and everyone's just cheering and crying.
Gosh.
And then Chris and Lindsay and I and our colleague Nick Fine all headed up to the hospital almost immediately and went and rejoiced with them and gathered around them. And it's been a beautiful thing to see ever since. And we stay in really good touch with them. But again, too, it wasn't only her reaction. It was also Chris asked me to send something to the chefs that just participated in the festival, that had helped raise all this money. And so I did. And that's where his mindfulness, it's intrinsic, that everyone is invested. Everyone is involved. It's not only just a pat on the shoulder for Southern Smoke and something that we put in the press. It's truly all the way around. He's built this community with this organization that is so hefty and swift and trusted and pretty magnificent when you get into saving lives.
And many of those people that we shared that story with have gone on to tell it again and again.
Yeah.
I've listened to podcasts that some of these other chefs have done when they talk about, first of all, why do they still participate in food festivals?
Right.
And that seems to be a trend that chefs are getting away from, because they don't mean anything in most cases, but everybody says that they will always continue to participate in Southern Smoke. And for example, they will cite stories like Danny's because they know what they did saved someone. And it's very rare to participate in any nonprofit event, fundraising event, and know that.
And bravo to you for closing the loop on that story.
Yeah.
It couldn't just end with handing the check over. I mean, it would be such a missed opportunity to not then circle back on the impact of that. And I mean, that is like telling your kids you're going to Disney World level of news, And so, which makes the next time you want to ask them to participate in the festival, they're not only just going to say yes, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I remember that feeling. How many other Danny's can I replicate out there?
And I just keep thinking of the word hospitality, because I know that's just ingrained in the chef culture, of taking care of people. And I just think this unreal level of hospitality for complete strangers is just so moving, and that's just so baked into the DNA of what y'all do. So goodness.
I'm drinking that Kool-Aid.
I'm drinking it.
Well, they probably don't serve Kool-Aid at any of these restaurants. That's too
lowbrow.
I've been drinking it for a while, and it's done me wonders.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Well, we ask all of our guests, and I honestly can't wait to hear your response on this, but we ask everybody what's their one good thing, something practical that we could implement, or just a secret to the success of what y'all have seen.
Catherine, you want to start?
Yes. I thought about this, and it was the easiest answer for me to come up with. First of all, just for all the fundraisers out there, if you have not seen Simon Sinek speak in his TEDx talk, I highly recommend it. I think that it's an imperative tool for everyone to tap into.
Agreed.
You are my people once again.
We love Simon.
I can nerd out all day just
Simon.
on that alone, and I won't.
We're sending out the vibes for Simon to come to the podcast.
Yeah, Simon,
Come
please
on,
come on our
Simon.
podcast. Come share your wisdom.
I just die. I saw him speak at Dance USA, and my life changed forever.
Oh
Truly,
my
it
gosh.
changed.
Yeah,
It's
so
been-
cool.
But so for me, within the context of that, within the context of also nonprofit, there's a reason why you have a mission statement. And there is a reason why Simon says, go back to your why. And that to me makes every decision that I make on behalf of this organization so simple. And it stayed so clean. We are not in muddied waters. We're not something that somebody thinks that we're not. We're not constantly fighting battles outside of just our mission. So does it support people in the food and beverage industry? Great. And if that means starting a mental health program, is that a way to support people in the food and beverage industry? Yes. Okay, take that road, right? If right now we're working on a financial counseling program for people in the food and beverage industry, how to climb out of crisis, how to prepare for crisis, and what to do in the midst of crisis. So take that road. Yes, that makes sense. When it comes to hiring your contract labor staff and teaching them, who are we going to hire to come in during COVID and in the midst of a pandemic, when we need to hire 40 people to be case managers and screeners and communication specialists and processing applications, et cetera. We hire people that have been furloughed and unemployed from the food and beverage industry due to the pandemic. That's who you hire. You always go back to the why. And I promise you that will keep everything so centered and so grounded, and it will make it impossible for you not to speak in such a clear way about your organization and about your mission if you just live it and breathe it truly and transparently every day.
That was fantastic.
So
and I didn't say this before, but I thought it, and so I'm going to say it this time. Great job for not accepting everything, because I love your comment about going back to your why and making that just this simple decision-making process for how you do things. Because if you have really tight gift acceptance policies, then you're not going to be accepting a penguin suit on behalf of your organization. That's John and I's really strange example of something that we accepted one time in higher ed. So you don't want to accept burger carts, if it doesn't make sense to move the mission forward. So that was a great one. What about you, Lindsay?
Mine's a bit more general, but I think about it all the time that as an individual, there's no way that I could have given someone $100,000 to save their life or provide $3.5 million to an industry to keep their employees housed and clothed. My advice is don't underestimate yourself and don't underestimate the people around you, that even though that's not I don't have $1 million in my bank account, that doesn't mean I'm not capable with the right partners and the right people in place to raise that money and still give it away. And I think about that all the time, that what we've been able to do, just a bunch of cooks and communications professionals, and Catherine being the only one that represents nonprofit in our whole organization. What we've been able to do, and $5 million in 5 years is incredible, when we didn't even know exactly where it was going to take us when we started. But I think that's the beauty of it.
Never underestimate what a passionate chef could do to feed the world and change the world.
Absolutely.
You guys are doing it. We applaud you. Where can people go to learn more about Southern Smoke, and maybe even connect with two of you or Chris if they want to learn more or be helpful to your efforts?
southernsmoke.org. Everything's there.
All right. Are you on any social sites anywhere that people can connect with you, or LinkedIn?
We are. We're Southern Smoke TX on Twitter and Instagram, and then Southern Smoke on Facebook.
Awesome.
So great.
And I just have to give a little plug for the industry right now. And I don't know if I mentioned this, if it was before the call or actually on the call, but I was reading an article in the New York Times yesterday that talked about who are the winners and the losers of the pandemic, who is really profiting off of it and who is really suffering right now. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting when they talked about the food industry was that restaurants are really suffering while fast food is thriving. And so if there's one good thing, I'm adding one good thing to this episode, if there's one good thing you can do right now in your space of the world, wherever you are, it is support your local restaurants. Be generous with your tips, even if they're just walking out. If you're in a place where you can do that, these people are working so hard and they're doing what they can to put food in our bellies, and we really do want to support them and want to value them as frontline essential workers. So there's my one good thing for today too.
You guys, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been an honor to be here. Thank you.
You're good people.
Our cup is filled.
Yeah, we're rooting for you guys.
Yep.
Thank you for spending time with us. Have a good week.
Thank you. And keep up this effort. We love to know that you guys are out there.
Thank you. We will. Our hearts are open and we are hustling and loving every single second.
Well, we'll be listening.
Thank you.
Thank
yes,
you.
we will.